The acrid stench of smoke and charred metal hung thick in the air as Zara stumbled through the debris field, clutching her mangled arm. Violet blood oozed between her fingers, the flow only hastened by her racing heart. Each step sent fresh waves of agony radiating from the ruined limb. Around her, the scattered remnants of her ship hissed and popped, small fires still eating away at ruptured conduits and shattered bulkheads. She'd been lucky to survive the crash at all. Although, feeling the warm rivulets running down her wrist, lucky seemed a particularly ill-fitting word. Zara had been sent to broker peace, to bridge the yawning chasm of misunderstanding between her people, the Talaxians, and the humans. She was to be an emissary of hope, the tip of the spear in a new era of cooperation. Instead, she found herself bleeding, broken on an alien world, her mission in tatters. She collapsed to her knees as another wave of dizziness crashed over her, her head swimming. The edges of her vision darkened, narrowing down to a pinpoint. She tried to rise, but her body wouldn't obey. As she slipped sideways, resigned to her fate, strong hands caught her. "Easy there, I got you," a deep voice murmured. Zara lulled her head, her gaze traveling up to a chiseled jaw, concerned eyes, close-cropped hair, the silvery glint of dog tags. He was human, a soldier by the look of him. She tensed, old instincts and warnings flaring through the fog of pain. Humans were volatile, unpredictable, not to be trusted. Her good arm twitched towards the plasma pistol at her hip. The man's eyes followed the movement, but he made no aggressive countermove. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you. I want to help." "Why?" Zara croaked, her throat raw from the acrid fumes. "Why help me?" A small smile tugged at his mouth. "Because it's the right thing to do. Because you need it." His gaze flickered to her ravaged arm. "That looks bad. We need to get you medical attention." Zara pulled weakly from his grip, cradling the ruined limb. She'd seen the damage as she dragged herself from the wreckage. Shattered bones, flesh and muscle rent by twisted metal, the oddly delicate protrusion of shattered ceramic plating. Talaxian prosthetics were marvels of engineering, almost indistinguishable from the real thing, but notoriously fragile outside their protective synth skin. Hers was damaged beyond repair, sparking and twitching unnaturally. "Leave it," she hissed through gritted teeth. "It's too far gone. Just cut the damn thing off." The soldier's brow furrowed. He reached out tentatively, turning the mangled limb with a gentleness that stood in stark contrast to his battle-hardened exterior. Zara flinched but didn't pull away, too exhausted to resist. "I don't think that's necessary," he said after a long moment. "I've seen injuries like this before. There might be another way, if you're willing to let me try." Zara huffed a bitter laugh. "You're human. I thought you'd jump at the chance to leave an alien crippled." His jaw tightened, a flash of something hard and fierce behind his eyes. "No, that's not how we do things. Not how I do things." He met her gaze squarely. "I'm Jace, by the way. Sergeant Jace Monroe, United Earth Marines." "Zara," she replied after a hesitation. "Talaxian Diplomatic Corps." Jace nodded, unsurprised. The insignia on her tattered uniform likely gave that much away. "Ambassador Zara, it's an honor. Now will you let me help you? I promise I will do everything in my power to save your arm." She searched his face, looking for any hint of deceit or malice, but all she saw was earnest determination, a steadfast conviction that seemed to be a hallmark of his species. Slowly, uncertainly, she nodded. Jace's smile widened. "Good. Then let's get started. It's going to be a long road, but I'll be with you every step of the way." He slipped an arm under her shoulders, helping her to her feet. Zara leaned into him, surprising herself with how readily she trusted his support. Perhaps it was the blood loss making her lightheaded, but she could have sworn she felt a spark of something pass between them in that moment. A connection, fragile yet profound, born of shared struggle and an unspoken promise. As they began the slow, painful trek back to his base, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that this was the start of something far bigger than a simple rescue. That the human at her side, with his stubborn refusal to accept defeat, might just change everything she thought she knew about his kind. The road ahead looked dark and uncertain, but for the first time since she'd crashed on this alien world, Zara dared to hope. With Sergeant Jace Monroe at her side, refusing to give up, perhaps anything was possible. Even peace. The medical bay at the human base was a hive of activity, medics and technicians rushing to and fro in organized chaos. Zara lay on a gurney in the midst of it all, biting back whimpers as Jace and a doctor worked on her mangled arm. "The damage is extensive," the doctor murmured, her brow creased in concentration as she examined the shattered prosthetic. "Ceramic structure is compromised, neural relays are fried. I'm not sure if we can save it," Jace interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. "We have to try." The doctor glanced at him, then back to Zara. "Ambassador, I must be frank. Even if we can salvage the prosthetic, the pain of reattaching it will be significant. It might be more humane to amputate and fit you with a new one once you're back on Talaxia." Zara closed her eyes, despair washing over her. To return home crippled, her mission a failure. It was unthinkable. But the alternative, to endure the agony the doctor described. "No." Jace's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "Amputation is a last resort. There has to be another way." The doctor sighed. "Sergeant Monroe, I understand your determination, but we have to be realistic. The technology to repair damage this severe, it simply doesn't exist." Jace was silent for a long moment, his jaw working. Then his eyes lit up with a sudden fire. "What about the Lazarus Project?" The doctor stiffened. "That's classified. How do you even know about?" She shook her head. "It doesn't matter. The Lazarus serum is still experimental, untested. We can't just." "But it could work, couldn't it?" Jace pressed. "I've seen the reports. Regeneration of damaged tissue, restoration of neural pathways. It's exactly what we need." The doctor rubbed her temples. "Theoretically, yes. But the side effects, the risks, it's not approved for human use, let alone extraterrestrial biology." Jace turned to Zara, his gaze intense. "What do you say, Ambassador? Are you willing to try?" Zara bit her lip, her mind racing. The Lazarus serum sounded like a miracle, a whisper of hope in a sea of despair. But the risks. She met Jace's eyes, saw the unwavering faith there, faith in her, in the chance for something better. Slowly, she nodded. The doctor threw up her hands. "I can't condone this, but I also won't stop you. I'll prep the ore." As she bustled away, Jace gripped Zora's good hand. "We'll get through this," he promised. "Together." Zara managed a weak smile. "You're stubborn for a human. You have no idea." Jace's grin was fierce, determined. "When we set our minds to something, we don't give up easily." That much was becoming abundantly clear to Zora. As they wheeled her gurney towards the operating room, she marveled at the tenacity of the man at her side. A human she'd known for mere hours, yet who was willing to move heaven and earth to help her. It defied everything she'd been taught about his species. But then, perhaps that was the point. Perhaps in the crucible of this shared trial, they were forging something new. A bond that transcended species, built on mutual respect and unyielding determination. The days that followed were a blur of pain and exhaustion, hope and setback. The Lazarus serum worked its magic, knitting shattered bone, regenerating seared flesh. But the process was agonizing, every nerve ending screaming as it was rebuilt from the cellular level up. Through it all, Jace remained at her side, a constant presence, a rock in the storm. He held her hand through the worst of the treatments, talked her through the long, painful nights. Slowly, inevitably, Zara found herself opening up to him, sharing stories of her world, her people, her hopes for the future. And in return, Jace shared his own tales of a life spent in service, of battles won and lost, of the unshakable camaraderie of his fellow soldiers, but also of the quiet moments, the dreams he'd set aside in the name of duty. In those long hours, Zara began to see him not just as a soldier, but as a man of deep conviction and surprising gentleness, of unwavering loyalty and hidden depths, a man she was coming to care for, far more than she'd ever expected. Slowly, day by painful day, Zora's arm healed. The ceramic plating smoothed out, the synthetic muscle reknit itself. Jace was there for every milestone, celebrating each tiny victory as if it were a triumph worthy of legend. And perhaps, in a way, it was. For as Zara flexed her newly restored fingers, marveling at the response, she knew it was more than just her arm that had been healed. Her heart, her very understanding of what was possible, had been transformed by the human at her side. As she prepared to return to her people, her mission renewed, Zara knew that nothing would ever be the same. Jace had shown her the true face of humanity, the indomitable spirit that refused to accept defeat. In the process, he'd sparked something within her, a fire that would not be quenched. She would carry that fire back to Talaxia, use it to forge a new path forward, a path of understanding, of cooperation, of the stubborn refusal to give up on a better future. And though they would be light years apart, Zara knew that a part of Jace would always be with her. His strength, his compassion, his unyielding determination, they were a part of her now, woven into the very fabric of her being. As she prepared to board the transport that would take her home, Zara turned to Jace one last time. There were so many things she wanted to say, emotions she'd only begun to understand. But in the end, she settled on the simplest, most profound truth. "Thank you," she whispered, pulling him into a tight embrace. "For everything." Jace returned the hug fiercely, his voice rough with emotion. "Always." It was a promise, Zara knew. A vow that no matter the distance, no matter the challenges ahead, they would always fight for what they had found here. The understanding, the connection, the unbreakable bond forged in the fires of adversity. As the transport carried her away, Zara watched Jace's figure recede into the distance. Her arm ached, a phantom pain that had nothing to do with her injury. But it was a good ache, a reminder of all they had overcome. She turned her face towards the stars, towards the future. It was a future that looked brighter now, filled with new possibilities. And as she clenched her restored fist, Zara made a silent promise of her own. She would not waste this second chance. She would use it to build bridges, to forge peace, to create a universe where the stubborn determination of humans and the indomitable spirit of Talaxians could work hand in hand. It would be a long road, fraught with challenges and setbacks, but Zara was ready for it. After all, she'd had an excellent teacher in the art of never giving up. With a smile on her lips and fire in her heart, Zara set course for home. The future was waiting, and she had a lot of work to do. Zara stood at the viewport of her quarters, staring out at the vast expanse of space. The stars streaked by, elongated by the ship's faster-than-light velocity, but Zara's mind was light years away. It had been months since she'd left Earth, since she'd said goodbye to Jace. Months of grueling rehabilitation, of learning to use her newly healed arm. Months of debriefings and strategy meetings, of planning for the monumental task ahead. For Zara's mission had only just begun. The Lazarus serum that had saved her arm held the potential to revolutionize medicine, to save countless lives on both Talaxia and Earth. But it was also a source of great tension, a flashpoint in the already strained relations between their two worlds. There were those on Talaxia who saw the serum as a bargaining chip, a way to extract concessions from the humans. And there were those on Earth who viewed sharing the technology as a security risk, a potential threat to their military dominance. It was up to Zara to bridge the gap, to find a way forward that served both their interests. A daunting task, made all the more complicated by the swirling emotions in her heart. For try as she might, Zara couldn't shake her thoughts of Jace, his strength, his compassion, the way he had fought for her when no one else would. It had touched something deep within her, awakened feelings she'd never known she was capable of. But he was human, and she was Talaxian. There could be no future for them, no happy ending. The best she could hope for was that their brief connection had forged a path to peace, a foundation on which to build a better future for both their peoples. A chime at the door shook Zora from her reverie. She straightened her uniform, composing herself. Enter. The door slid open to reveal Creston, her aide. His usually stoic face was lined with worry. Ambassador, we have a situation. Zara's heart sank. What is it? Our intelligence has uncovered a plot. A faction within the Earth military, opposed to sharing the Lazarus technology. They plan to steal the formula, to keep it for themselves. Zara's mind raced. If the formula was stolen, if the hardliners on Earth got their way, it could mean war. All her work, all the fragile progress they'd made, would be for nothing. We have to stop them, she said, her voice hard. Do we know where they're planning to strike? Creston nodded. The primary research facility on Elysium. But Ambassador, there's more. Zara braced herself. What? The leader of the faction. It's Sergeant Monroe. For a moment, Zara forgot to breathe. Jace, it couldn't be. He would never. But the look on Creston's face left no room for doubt. The man she trusted, the man she'd come to care for, he was the enemy. Zara closed her eyes, grief and betrayal washing over her. But beneath it, a kernel of something else. Determination. Resolve. She opened her eyes, her gaze hard as steel. Ready my ship. We're going to Elysium. The journey felt both interminable and all too brief, Zora's heartbeat marking time one agonizing second at a time. She tried to wrap her head around the catastrophic news, to make sense of the unthinkable, but at every turn, it defied all logic, all understanding. The Jace she knew was honorable to a fault, dedicated to duty and service. For him to betray that, to turn his back on everything he believed in, it seemed as impossible as turning back time itself. Soon enough, too soon, they were orbiting Elysium. The planet was a gleaming emerald, the jewel of the Talaxian scientific community. Its research facilities were the marvel of the sector, devoted to the pursuit of knowledge and the betterment of all sentient life, including the Lazarus facility, where within the hour, the future of two worlds would be decided. We're being hailed, Creston reported from the co-pilot's seat, Earth Military Channel. It's Sergeant Monroe. Zara's heart leaped into her throat. Put it through. A moment later, his face was on the screen. That face, those strong, distinctive features that had haunted Zora's dreams for months, but twisted now with urgency and strain. Ambassador Zora, you need to listen to me. His voice was strained, rushed. Listen to you. Zora couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. Why should I listen to a traitor? Jace's eyes widened. Traitor? No, Zora, you don't understand. I'm not the one behind this. I'm trying to stop it. Zara stared at him, wanting desperately to believe, to trust. But it was too much, too painful. The betrayal still too raw. I find that hard to believe, Sergeant Monroe, she said coldly. My agents report that you are the leader of this conspiracy, that you plan to steal the Lazarus formula for yourself, to keep it from my people. Jace shook his head vehemently. No, that's not true. It's Admiral Iverson. He's the one planning to steal the formula. I'm trying to stop him, to keep the peace. Please, Zora, you have to believe me. The mention of Iverson made Zora pause. He was a notorious hardliner, a vocal opponent of cooperation with non-human species. If he was behind this, she met Jace's eyes, desperately searching for any hint of deceit, of betrayal. But all she saw was earnest desperation, a frantic plea for trust. He's telling the truth, a new voice said. Zara turned to see a human woman stepping into frame. She wore an Earth military uniform, her long dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. Captain Anita Patel, she introduced herself. I'm with Earth Intelligence. We've been tracking Iverson for months. Monroe is one of ours, part of the operation to bring him down. Zara looked back and forth between them, hope warring with suspicion. Could it be? Could Jace really be innocent? Why should I believe you? She asked, her voice trembling. Either of you. Jace leaned forward, his gaze intense. Because you know me, Zara. You know I would never betray you, or our dream of peace. I care about you too much for that. Zara's breath caught. In his eyes, she saw it. The same longing, the same forbidden feelings that had haunted her for so long. Sergeant Monroe is risking everything to stop Iverson, Captain Patel said. His career, his freedom, everything. Because he believes in what you're trying to do. In peace. Zara closed her eyes, tears threatening to spill. When she opened them again, her resolve was set. What do you need me to do? Jace's relief was palpable, even through the view screen. We need your help to secure the Lazarus facility. Iverson has men on the inside, ready to strike. But he won't be expecting the joint Earth-Talaxian operation. Zara nodded. My security team can be ready in 10 minutes. I'll meet you at the facility, Jace said. And Zara, thank you for trusting me. The screen went dark. For a long moment, Zara just stared at it, her heart racing. Ambassador. Creston's voice was gentle. What are your orders? Zara took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. The path ahead was dangerous, uncertain. But for the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope. Assemble the team, she said, her voice steady. We have a future to save. The Lazarus Research Facility loomed before them, a monolith of gleaming metal and reinforced glass. Under normal circumstances, it would have been a beacon of hope, a symbol of the boundless potential of science to improve lives across the galaxy. But today, it was a battleground. Zara led her security team through the winding corridors, their footsteps echoing in the eerie stillness. The facility had been evacuated, the scientists and support staff ushered to safety in anticipation of the coming storm. At every turn, Zara expected to meet resistance, to face the barrel of a gun, wielded by one of Iverson's fanatics. But they encountered only silence, an unsettling emptiness that set her nerves on edge. Beside her, Jace was a coiled spring, his eyes constantly moving, his hand never straying far from his weapon. He had shed his Earth military uniform, replacing it with anonymous tactical gear. A necessary precaution, he'd explained, to avoid implicating Earth in the event of failure. But it wasn't just his clothing that had changed. There was a hardness to him now, a grim determination that spoke of the weight of the task before them. Gone was the gentle healer who had sat by her bedside, replaced by a warrior ready to do what must be done. Ahead, the corridor opened into a cavernous atrium, the heart of the facility, where the Lazarus formula was developed, tested, and produced. And there, standing before the massive main console, was Admiral Iverson. He turned as they entered, a triumphant sneer on his face. Ah, Ambassador. And Sergeant Monroe. I was wondering when you'd show up to spoil the party. Jace stepped forward, his gun leveled at Iverson's chest. It's over, Admiral. Step away from the console. Iverson laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Over? Oh, I don't think so. In fact, I'd say things are just getting interesting. He tapped a command on the console. Suddenly, doors around the atrium slid open, disgorging dozens of armed soldiers. They quickly surrounded Zara and her team, weapons drawn. Zara's heart sank. They were badly outnumbered, outgunned. She met Jace's eyes, saw the same realization there. Did you really think it would be that easy? Iverson asked, gloating. That I wouldn't be prepared for your little alliance. I've been planning this for months. Why? Zara asked, her voice tight with anger. Why risk war, risk everything, just to keep the Lazarus formula for yourself? Iverson's face twisted with contempt. You really don't get it, do you? The Lazarus serum isn't just a medical breakthrough. It's a weapon, the key to human supremacy. He stepped forward, his voice rising with fervor. With this formula, we can create an army of super soldiers, unbeatable, unbreakable. We can finally take our rightful place as the dominant power in the galaxy. You're insane, Jace spat. The Lazarus serum was developed to heal, not to wage war. And that is why you will never understand, Monroe, Iverson said dismissively. You're too soft, too weak to see the bigger picture. But no matter. You've already played your part. He turned back to the console, his hand hovering over the controls. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a formula to upload and a new world order to initiate. Time seemed to slow. Zara saw Jace tense, saw his finger tighten on the trigger. She knew with absolute certainty that he would take the shot, that he would give his life to stop Iverson. And in that frozen moment, she made a decision. She lunged forward, throwing herself at Iverson. They crashed to the ground in a tangle of limbs, grappling for control of the console. Chaos erupted. Iverson's men opened fire, the atrium exploding with the sound of gunshots and energy blasts. Jace and Zara's team dove for cover, returning fire. But Zara barely noticed the battle raging around her. All her focus, all her strength, was poured into keeping Iverson's hands away from the console. He was stronger than her, his combat training evident in every brutal move. But Zara fought with the desperate strength of one who knows what's at stake, of one fighting not just for herself, but for the future of worlds. In the end, it was that strength that made the difference. With a final, wrenching effort, Zara slammed Iverson's head against the console, rendering him unconscious. Panting, she pulled herself to her feet. Around her, the battle was winding down, Iverson's men falling one by one to the determined onslaught of Jace and her security team. But the victory felt hollow, because across the atrium, Jace lay unmoving, a pool of red spreading beneath him. No, the cry tore from Zara's throat as she ran to him, heedless of the continuing firefight. She fell to her knees beside him, her hands immediately pressing against the wound in his chest, trying desperately to stem the flow of blood. Jace, stay with me, she pleaded, her voice breaking. You can't leave me, not now. Not after everything. His eyes fluttered open, hazy with pain. Zara. His voice was a whisper, a fragile thing. Did we stop him? Yes. Tears streamed down Zora's face, mingling with the blood on her hands. We did it. We saved the formula, saved the peace. A ghost of a smile touched Jace's lips. Good. That's good. His eyes started to drift shut. Zara shook him, desperation clawing at her heart. No, Jace, stay awake. You have to stay awake. With an effort that seemed to cost him everything, Jace forced his eyes open. Zara, I'm sorry. For everything. I wish. No, no goodbyes. Zara's voice was fierce, unyielding. You're going to be okay. You have to be okay. Because I. The words caught in her throat, 3 words she'd never said, never dared to even think. But now, with death hovering so close, they burst from her in a raw whisper. I love you. Jace's eyes widened, a stunned wonder breaking through the pain. His hand found hers, weak but warm. Zara. And then his eyes rolled back, his grip going slack. No. Zara screamed it, a primal, wordless denial. Around her, she was vaguely aware of her team securing the room, of medics rushing forward. But all she could see was Jace, still and pale, slipping away from her. Get me the Lazarus serum, now, she ordered, her voice cracking with desperation. The medics hesitated. Ambassador, the serum hasn't been fully tested on humans. We don't know what it will do. I don't care. Zora was almost sobbing now, her composure shattered. It saved my arm. It can save him. It has to save him. Creston was there, a steadying hand on her shoulder, a vial of glowing blue liquid in his hand. "Ambassador, are you sure?" Zara met his gaze, her eyes blazing with determination, with the absolute refusal to accept defeat. "He never gave up on me. I won't give up on him." She took the vial, her hands shaking as she loaded it into an injector. Then, with a silent prayer to any deity that might be listening, she pressed it against Jace's neck and activated it. The serum entered his bloodstream in a rush, spreading through his body in a network of glowing blue veins. For a long, terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then, miraculously, Jace's chest rose, a breath, shallow but unmistakable. Zara nearly collapsed with relief, fresh tears cascading down her cheeks. She clutched Jace's hand as the medics swarmed around him, monitoring his vitals, marveling at the rapid regeneration of his wounded flesh. He was alive. Against all odds, against all hope, he was alive. And in that moment, as she watched the man she loved breathe, as she felt the faint pulse of his heartbeat beneath her fingers, Zara knew that everything had changed. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be questions, recriminations, fallout from Iverson's attempted coup. The peace they'd fought so hard for was still fragile, still uncertain. But they would face it together, humans and Talaxians, united by a bond that had been forged in the crucible of crisis, tempered by the unbreakable strength of love. They had done the impossible, had found a way forward where none seemed to exist, and they had done it the hard way, through determination, sacrifice, and an unyielding refusal to give up. As Jace's eyes fluttered open, as they met hers with a weak but luminous smile, Zara felt a surge of hope, of unshakable faith in the future. They had saved each other in every way it was possible to be saved, and together they would save so much more. The aftermath of the Lazarus incident, as it came to be known, was a whirlwind of activity and change. Admiral Iverson and his co-conspirators were arrested and faced trial for their attempted coup. The proceedings sent shockwaves through Earth's military and political establishments, sparking a period of intense introspection and reform. But even as Earth grappled with the implications of Iverson's betrayal, a new era of cooperation was dawning. The Lazarus formula, once a source of tension and secrecy, was now a symbol of unity and hope. Under Zara's guidance, and with Jace's unwavering support, the formula was shared freely with the Talaxian scientific community. Together, human and Talaxian researchers worked to refine and enhance the serum, unlocking its full potential. The medical breakthroughs that followed were nothing short of miraculous. Diseases that had plagued both species for centuries were eradicated. Injuries once thought irreparable were healed completely. The quality of life for countless individuals across the galaxy improved immeasurably. But the impact of the Lazarus serum went far beyond the medical realm. It became a catalyst for a new relationship between Earth and Talaxia, one based on trust, respect, and a shared commitment to the greater good. Embassies were established, cultural exchanges initiated. For the first time in history, humans and Talaxians worked side by side, not just in laboratories, but in schools, in businesses, in the very fabric of each other's societies. And at the forefront of this new era were Zara and Jace, the unlikely pair who had risked everything to make it possible. In recognition of their efforts, they were appointed as the first co-ambassadors of the Earth-Talaxia Alliance. It was a role they embraced with their characteristic dedication and passion, working tirelessly to foster understanding and cooperation between their two worlds. It wasn't always easy. There were misunderstandings, prejudices to overcome on both sides, but they faced each challenge as they had faced everything else. Together, with unwavering faith in each other and in the power of their shared vision. And slowly, day by day, the alliance grew stronger. The bonds between their peoples deepened, enriched by the diversity of their cultures and the combined strength of their resolve. Through it all, Zara and Jace's love for each other only grew. The connection that had been forged in the fires of adversity, that had been tested and proven time and again, became the bedrock of their lives. They were married in a ceremony that was broadcast across the stars, a symbol of the unity they had fought so hard to achieve. Representatives from dozens of worlds attended, a testament to the far-reaching impact of their efforts. As they exchanged vows, as they promised to love, honor, and cherish each other always, Zara felt a sense of profound rightness, of certainty in the path they had chosen. Looking into Jace's eyes, seeing the love and devotion shining there, she knew that every struggle, every sacrifice, had been worth it. That together, they could face anything. Years passed, filled with triumphs and challenges, joys and sorrows. They welcomed children into the world, a son and a daughter who embodied the best of both their species. They watched as the alliance they had nurtured grew into a galactic force for peace and progress. Through it all, they never forgot the lessons they had learned, the truths they had discovered in their darkest moments. That hope was stronger than fear, that understanding could bridge any divide. That love was the most powerful force in the universe, capable of overcoming any obstacle, and that sometimes the hardest path was the only one worth taking. It was a lesson they passed on to their children, and to all those they met in their long and remarkable lives, a legacy of determination, of courage, of the unshakable belief that a better future was always possible, if one had the strength to fight for it. And so, when the time came for them to step back, to pass the torch to a new generation, they did so with hearts full of gratitude and hope. They retired to a small cottage on Talaxia, overlooking the crystal seas where Zara had played as a child. There, surrounded by mementos of a life shared, they lived out their days in peace and contentment. Often, in the quiet moments of twilight, they would sit together and watch the stars emerge, one by one, in the darkening sky. Stars that had once seemed so distant, so unknowable, but which now felt like old friends, welcoming them home. "We did it, didn't we?" Jace would say softly, his hand entwined with hers. "We made a difference." Zara would smile, leaning into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "We did, my love. We did." They had achieved so much. These two who had started as enemies, who had become allies, friends, lovers, who had changed the course of history through the sheer force of their conviction, their refusal to give up on each other or on the future they dreamed of. And yet, in the end, their greatest achievement was not measured in treaties signed or medical breakthroughs made. It was in the lives they had touched, the hearts they had changed. It was in the laughter of their children, the gleam of wonder in their grandchildren's eyes as they heard the story of a love that had overcome the impossible. It was in the way they held each other, still, after all the years, with a tenderness that spoke of a bond unbroken by time, undiminished by the challenges they had faced. They had walked the hard road, and in doing so, they had discovered the true meaning of strength. Not the strength of arms or armies, but the strength of the spirit, the strength that comes from an unshakable faith in the power of hope and love. And as they sat there, two old warriors basking in the warmth of a love story for the ages, they knew that it was a discovery they would cherish always. For it was the discovery that had made everything possible, that had guided them through the darkness and into the light. The discovery that had given them the courage to stand up, to reach out, to build a future brighter than any they had dared to imagine. The discovery that, in the end, had changed everything. Not just for them, but for all those who would follow in their footsteps, who would look to the stars and see not the limits of what was, but the infinite potential of what could be. And so, as the last light faded, and the night wrapped around them like a blanket, Zara and Jace held each other close, their hearts full of the quiet joy of a life well lived, a love well fought for. They had faced the trials, they had weathered the storms. They had proven, time and again, that the truest strength lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. And in doing so, they had left a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. A legacy of hope, of courage, of the unbreakable bonds of the heart. A legacy that would inspire generations yet to come, to reach for the stars, to dream the impossible dream, to always, always choose the harder right over the easier wrong, and to never, ever give up.